Welcome back to Everything Weapons. Smash the like button. Let's get right into it. So today we're going to be discussing the A-10 and how a disciplined case for the A-10 and the Air Force won't make. So the United States Air Force says the A-10's service is extended to 2030, but funding and planning doesn't really reflect that, which has to change and fast. I'm going to be reading from the War Zone, so all credit to them. So the service says the Warthog will fly until 2030, which is a considerable amount of time as we approach the end of the 2020s, right? But evidence shows a lack of commitment and the irreversible loss of the A-10 combat capability is instead just months away. So this September, the A-10 Warthog Thunderbolt II was scheduled to make its final flight. Instead, the A-10 deployed again, this time supporting combat operations over the Strait of Hormuz in Iran, striking Iranian fast attack craft and maritime threats near one of the world's most important shipping choke points. The A-10 was also the Sandy escort that recovered two downed F-15E airmen from inside of Iran. Then later in April, the U.S. Air Force reversed course and announced it would keep the jet flying until 2030. While the Air Force changed the headline, it has yet to follow through with the harder financial commitment needed to preserve actual A-10 combat power. Its official 2027 budget, released shortly after the extension announcement, funds $0 of A-10 modernization, cuts depot maintenance below the service's own stated requirement, and is crippled by sunset policy and institution resistance around the aircraft's upcoming divestment. In other words, by the end of this year of 2026, the A-10 Warthog will be without depot support, without a training pipeline, without weapons school instruction, and without operational test capacity, to a community that was scheduled for final retirement this October. Every month waiting for the promised extension makes rebuilding slower, even more costly, and closer to an impossible task. Without action, the A-10 will transition from a combat asset to a line item waiting for liquidization, which basically means it's on its way out. It's the A-10 Thunderbolt is on its way out, and A-10 combat capability requires a meaningful shift in priorities that brings back resources and overcomes institutional resistance. Saving a limited number of aircraft is wasteful unless it is matched with resources, personnel, and policy that make it clear the A-10 is a valuable combat asset. So the justification for preserving the A-10 is measurable in combat utility and financially sound reasoning. So the A-10 was not preserved out of nostalgia. It was preserved because the recent operations reminded the U.S. Air Force that immediate combat power still matters, and the A-10 has proven useful in ways many planners underestimated. Today, it provides unique value unmatched by any of its peer tactical aircraft, and it operates from crazy locations, supports standoff and maritime strike, and validates emerging lower-cost weapons that reduces pressure on more expensive strike aircraft using an older one. As noted, the A-10 also fills a critical combat role many have discounted: Sandy missions supporting combat search and rescue, recent recovery operations over Iran, protecting the two recent F-15E airmen It demonstrated once again that personnel recovery escort, pre-missive strike, armed reconnaissance, and low-altitude tactical coordination remain critical and complex combat skills. The A-10 community has been supporting these missions for over 50 years. That wealth of knowledge and experience is being displaced, and without a replacement, the United States Air Force carries a mission requirement it may prove unable to fulfill. So why preserving the A-10 was the right decision? Well, for years, the America's Air Force divestment logic rested on several assumptions: that future conflicts would prioritize different force packages, that replacement capability would mature on schedule, and that preserving the A-10 generated less value than just retiring it. Recent events changed that projection, so the A-10 Warthog has sustained operations in both Europe and the Middle East at once. Air Force strategy in the Pacific has been benefited from ongoing A-10 support, developing distributed combat employment, maritime strike, and advanced weapons integration. The same platform, once dismissed as a legacy close air support aircraft, is now proving adaptable to several emerging operational problems and service priorities. So the A-10 is not theoretical surge capability sitting in storage. It remains active combat power supporting real operational demand today in 2026, right? But combat escort, personnel recovery, pre-missive strike, armed reconnaissance, and maritime interdiction remain ongoing Air Force missions and long-standing A-10 strengths. A less-known strength of the A-10 is the leverage it provides as a modernization platform. So the A-10 community has quietly become one of the Air Force's most effective rapid integration ecosystems. Because the aircraft relies heavily on government-owned hardware and software architectures, operators and engineers have been able to test and field new capabilities in weeks instead of years. The community has been behind recent breakthrough integrations, including the AGR-20 APKWS small diameter bomb, ADM-160 mauled employment, beyond line-of-sight communications, maritime strike weapons, and network-enabled command and control. Nobody is arguing the A-10 is the future of Pacific air power. It doesn't need to be. The aircraft has become a low-cost operational laboratory for rapid tactical adaptation, fully integrated into real combat capability. So America's Air Force is trying to solve exactly these problems across the broader force. It's built doctrine around agile combat employment, dispersed basing, rapid combat regeneration, and operations from degraded infrastructure. So the A-10 has honed these skills for more than 30 years, proving proficient in these missions as early as Operation Desert Shield, if you remember. Including highway landings, integrated combat turns, and even maintenance operations and distributed basing experimentation. Preserving one of the few communities with real operational experience, executing tactics the broader force is still learning, is strategically wise. The A-10's latest life extension was never simply about preserving an airframe. It was about preserving combat capability, operational experience, and one of the Air Force's few proven rapid integration ecosystems. What the Air Force will lose. So the current plan has the service preserving a limited number of airframes while allowing the combat system behind the A-10 to collapse. A fleet that numbered more than 280 aircraft just a few years ago and 162 at the start of official 2026 is set to fall to 54 next year and just 36 by the year of 2030. The cuts land hardest where the expertise is hardest to rebuild. The Air National Guard's A-10 force, 47 aircraft as recently as last year, goes to zero. Its flying hours swapped for a new cyber mission. What survives risks becoming a ghost fleet. So, of the 3 squadrons to 2030, the Chief of Staff has promised the active duty force shrinks to a single squadron of just 17 jets with no spares behind it. So, combat capability does not reside in aluminum alone. It resides in maintenancers, instructional pilots, operational test teams, weapons officers, logistic pipelines, and institutional continuity accumulated over decades of testing of an aircraft, right? All of that is currently at risk. So the capacity to produce, refine, and retain this talent and expertise is perishable. So airmen face irreversible career decisions. Maintenancers transition to other fleets. Weapons instructors leave. Operational test is blocked. Once assignment pipelines close and personnel move, the impact compounds quickly. To a community that was previously scheduled for final retirement this October, every month of uncertainty adds to the complexity of sustained readiness. So rebuilding later becomes expensive and slow, if not possible. But how perishable A-10 specific knowledge was documented by the Air Force's own testing when the Pentagon ran a 2018 to 2019 fly-off to determine whether the F-35 could replace the A-10 in close air support, forward air control, airborne, and combat search and rescue. F-35 pilots had no qualification or training requirements for the FACA and CSAR missions. To make the comparison work, the test had to crew the F-35 with former A-10 pilots, aviators who carried their Sandy and weapons school training over from the very aircraft being retired. The report demonstrated mission performance depended on the aircrew, not the airframe. But years later, in 2023 and 2024, the Air Force still had no close air support or CSAR training requirement for any F-35 pilot. In April of this year of 2026, the formal A-10 training unit at Davis-Monthan, the 357th Fighter Squadron, the schoolhouse that is home to the Sandy qualification, graduated its last class. On the same day, halfway across the world, A-10 flew the combat rescue mission, saving downed aircrew inside of Iran. The dissonance between real-world combat value and misaligned budget politics will be on full display if the 357th Schoolhouse and its Sandy training syllabus are allowed to fully inactive in just a few months. So the Air Force has confirmed there is no transition underway to move the Sandy mission to any other airframe, and no successor qualification program is in development currently. And this is not a new concern. In 2021, the Senate formally recorded that A-10 combat search and rescue had been 100% effective in Operation Allied Force, recovering a downed F-117 and F-16 pilot. The Warthog has now done it again over Iran. Congress has consistently levied the concern, but the Air Force and its budget still haven't made this a real priority. So the Air Force has already invested heavily to preserve A-10 viability well beyond into 2030. Roughly $1.1 billion to re-wing the 173 aircraft, completed in 2019, and a follow-on contract worth up to $999 million to put new wings on the remaining 109, about $2.1 billion in total to extend the entire fleet's structural life into the late 2030s. But even those investments faced similar institutional resistance within the Americans' Air Force. So the service repeatedly placed A-10 funding on its unfunded requirements list rather than its base budget, while funding upgrades to other legacy fighters instead. Congress has consistently met Air Force resistance, such as in 2021, when the service spent just $15.6 million of $100 million Congress had appropriated to sustain the fleet into the 2030s, allowing the enterprise behind those re-winged jets to collapse. Now would write off an investment the taxpayer and Congress already paid for and has barely begun to recoup. So, the financial logic behind accelerated divestment is also less straightforward than top-line savings figures suggest. So retiring the A-10 Warthog does not eliminate operational demand. Combat search and rescue escort, pre-missive strike, and armed reconnaissance, along with distributed operations requirements still exist. Those missions and their costs migrate elsewhere, where more flight hours on higher cost aircraft, additional maintenance burden, increased schoolhouse demand, and greater operational tempo across communities already under strain. So the A-10 offers combat power at a discount through both costs per flight hour and cost per effect on target. Mission specialization means A-10 employing laser-guided rockets, gun, or other low-cost weapons provides a strong complement to high-end fighter packages and their standoff weapons. So the Air Force must revisit their A-10 commitments to ensure the extension is real. So the Air Force must restore and protect the 357th Fighter Squadron at Davis-Monthan. So they must stabilize the rest of the enterprise through the extension timeline and tie any future divestment to demonstrated replacement readiness, not the calendar. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed watching, and I guess we're going to see the United States Air Force use the A-10 Warthog well into 2030 and possibly even further. I mean, it's still a very good aircraft, and they upgrade it all the time, so I guess we'll have to wait and see, but right now the A-10 looks like it's going to stay. So smash the like button, a thumbs up, and dropping a like really helps me out on YouTube. It pushes my videos to other people, so that's greatly appreciated. And subscribe. Don't forget to ring the bell, guys. That way you don't miss any videos that I post in the future, because you receive a text notification every time a new video of mine drops. Once again, you've been watching Everything Weapons. Type us a comment down below of what you think the U.S. Air Force should do. Should they keep the A-10? I guess they don't really have a choice, do they? But let me know what you thought about this video and this episode. And until next time, I will see you guys in the next one. Hope you have a good day. Peace.